Hi, my name is Julia at the Greenwell Springs branch of the East Baton Rouge Parish Library, and today I'm going to show you how to make a mermaid feltie.
Your kit should contain 2 pieces of felt for the body, a piece of embroidery floss that's body colored, 2 pieces of felt cut for the tail, a piece of embroidery floss that's tail colored, a front piece of the hair and a back piece of the hair, and a piece of embroidery floss that's colored to match that. You should have a selection of shells and sequins for the eyes, a popsicle stick for stuffing, a small bag of polyfill, and a card that contains 2 needles and 6 pins. I'm going to start out by lining up my felt pieces. I'm going to situate the head against the hair. I'm going to pin it. This is the back body piece. I'm going to lay the body on top of the tail, like so, and pin it in place. Now I'm going to take the front of the body, line it up with the back. I'm going to take the front of the hair and line it up with the front of the body, the top of the head there, and the back of the hair. I'm going to hold it, pull it away, and pin it in place so that it stays lined up. Now I'm going to make sure that's lined up, take the front of the tail, line it up on the body and the back of the tail, and pin it down, being careful not to pin all the way through. So now you should have the front of the body and the back of the body. Now I'm going to take a needle. I'm going to take my hair colored embroidery thread. It'll be 6 strands twisted together, and I'm going to take one strand and I'm going to very carefully pull that one strand away from the other 5. I've got my needle threaded. I'm going to make a knot in the end of the thread by holding the cut ends up against the end of the needle like that, wrapping it around a few times, pulling it down, and pulling the needle through those loops. You get a nice little knot at the end. Now I'm going to start sewing my way around the edge of the body through to the hair, sewing the hair to the body, not around the arms. And it's going to show up really strongly on this side, on the body side, but it's not going to show up very much at all on the hair side. And I'm just going to go around. I'm going to try and make smaller stitches on the back, on the hair side, smaller stitches. And I'm just going to sew all the way around the edges and actually sew the hair down to the back. Then I'm going to take a piece of my tail colored thread and do the same with the tail. Put that to the side. I'll come back. I will sew the front of the hair to the front of the body, flip it over, start coming through that side, and you'll want to follow this edge instead of the edge of the head. Then we'll go back and sew down the tail in much the same way with the green thread. All right, I've sewn all the way around the head there. You can see I've got the smaller stitches on the back so they don't show as much. And I'm going to tie the thread off by going just under the last stitch and coming back through the loop. Come back to the middle and do that again, so that the end of the thread is going to be hidden in the middle there. All right, you can see now I've got all the front pieces sewn together and all the back pieces sewn together. Now I'm going to take a second and I'm going to add some embellishment. I'm going to add eyes. I'm going to use sequins here, but if you like, you can just take a piece of your embroidery thread and sew back and forth several times until you have an eye like this. Or you can use a bead or whatever you have available to you at home. What I've got is I have some sequins. So I'm going to figure out where I want my eyes to go. And then I'm going to come up with my needle through the center hole of the sequin. I'm going to come back. I'm going to lay the point of my needle right here near the sequin. I'm going to wrap the thread around it several times, or maybe 5. I'm going to come back and I'm going to send the needle back through like that. Hold this. I'm going to pull the thread through, and now that's something called a French knot, and that will hold the eye in place. I'm going to do the same thing for the second eye. And now the eyes are secure. Go to the back, go through right there, make a little knot. There we go. I'm just going to sketch in a little bit a mouth using my embroidery thread. Right about here. Just do a few little stitches. And I've got a little smile. From here, I'm going to take my seashells. So I've got a little piece of green thread here I'm going to use. You can use whichever color you prefer. I'm going to try and center my seashells like so. And I'm going to aim to come up through the hole there. And I'm going to go right back down on the other side. And I'm going to go around several times with my thread, coming up and going back down. Now I've got that secure. I'm just going to tie it off. And if you want to play around with it from here, add more buttons or decorations or sequins. Use your embroidery thread to make patterns on your tail as you like. Now would be the time to do so, because our next step is going to start sewing together the two sides. I've got a fresh piece of green thread, my tail color. I'm going to pin the front and back side together in a few strategic spots so that it doesn't get too much out of order as I'm sewing it. And I'm going to start right here at her waist. Come up through the middle right where it meets the body piece. tuck in my thread. And I'm going to start going around using a blanket stitch, which is, I pulled it through, went through from the back. For my first stitch, I came out right where the first stitch started. And I'm going to go through this loop before pulling it tight. I'm going to come around, coming again through from the back. I'm going to pick up that loop again, pull it tight, and it gives us a nice little border on the edges of our feltie. I'm just going to sew around the edge of the tail, being very careful at this not to go too far in. I'm going to stop around here, and I'm going to fill the tail with the stuffing just a little, because if you wait till the very end, it is almost impossible to get it in there. All right, I'm coming back in a little bit early. I've had to change threads. I just tied 2 of my blanket stitches in the same place. Pulled the knot tight and pulled the loose end down into the base of the tail. I'm going to start another blanket stitch right where I left on the old one, basically on top. And just do a few more stitches before I do a little bit of stuffing. Right here, I want to get my flukes stuffed before I go any farther. I'm going to take my popsicle stick, a little bit of fluff. You can't really even get your finger in there. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to stuff it and push it. And just work it as far down into the tail as I can. I have something pointy, toothpick or a pen. You can kind of get it a little farther down into the flukes. But if not, it's not super important that you get those filled. Just going to add a little bit more. And I'm going to keep blanket stitching up the side of the tail. I'm going to go all the way up to here. I'm going to change my thread to my skin colored thread. I'm going to go up each side individually. I'll show you how to finish off the head on one side. Okay, I'm getting up in here where the neck and the hair meet. I'm going to be very carefully slide my needle in between the hair and the body, come through, up and through, and continue with the blanket stitch. Just be careful not to go all the way out around the edge of the hair. I'm going to take a second and a little bit of stuffing, and I'm going to fill up that arm. There you go. So I'm going to sew to here and tie it off. I'm going to come up and sew to here, and I'll come back. We'll stuff the rest and then sew around the head. I've sewn up to her shoulder, not all the way up her neck, but I want to leave myself a little more room here to stuff the bottom half. I'm going to use my popsicle stick, push a little stuffing down into the arm. First, I can really just use my finger. I'm finishing up the head here. This is as much as I will sew up the sides of the head. So you can see I'm just going through between the head and hair and coming up on the other side between the head and the hair and finishing it off. Now I've gone back to my hair colored thread, and I'm not going to try and blanket stitch this because the edges don't line up exactly. There's a little bit of overlap on the back and a lot of overlap on the side. So I'm just going to go in right here, tuck my ends inside, and I'm just going to do another little running stitch right around the edges. Now keep in mind that the stitches are not going to be hidden. I'm going to finish stitching around. I'm going to leave a finger's width open on this side. I'm going to finish stuffing the head, and I'll come back to close it up. You can see I'm done with stuffing. I'm just going to finish closing up my hole. Alright, and now I can tie my thread off. I'm going to go through one more time. I'm going to go in, angle my needle so that it comes up in between. Go back. Continue to go back in between. Try and go through that last stitch you made. Pick up your loop. Pull it tight so that you're not sinks in between your layers. Send the needle back through your layers and push it out through the back of the head. Squish it down a little. Cut it close, and when you let it go, your thread is secured with inside of your plush. And there you go. You have your mermaid.